Okay, super. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for the Your Overseas Home virtual event. My name is Greta Azzopardi, and I'm your host today. So it's great to have you all with us, whether you're watching live or catching up on demand. In this webinar, we'll be discussing the financial and tax essentials of moving to Cyprus, and we're joined by Chris from Chase Buchanan. So thanks so much for being with us this morning, Chris. Before we get into your presentation, if you could just give our viewers a short introduction to you and what Chase Buchanan does, that would be great.
Of course. Now, my name's Christopher or Chris or whatever you want to call me. I moved to Cyprus myself in May, so I know firsthand how difficult it is, especially when, considering all the factors you need to consider, tax, residency, and all that kind of stuff. I'm a bit luckier. I'm of Cypriot descent, so it was a bit more simpler. Both my parents are from Cyprus, and I moved in May to continue my financial services career here for expats and specifically for Cypriots too. So hopefully I'll be here to help you guys. And Chase Buchanan, we're a financial advice planners. We help with tax financials, investments, pensions, all that kind of stuff. And you're all doing the right thing in terms of attending events like this, getting as much knowledge as possible before you even consider booking the flights to get here. So it's putting yourself in the best position possible to start your life in sunny Cyprus, which you can't tell because I'm indoors with no windows at the moment. But
can imagine.
Yeah,
Behind
imagine
me.
the background there. Yeah. Would you like me to share my presentation?
Yeah, so that would be great. So yeah, I mean, this session is 30 minutes long, and yeah, as Chris said, he's got a presentation to share. So we'll wrap up around 10:05 to leave plenty of time for your questions.
Perfect. Just share it now. Sorry, there's a countdown.
No worries.
There we are.
Right.
So tax essentials are moving to Cyprus. Obviously, it's not just going to be tax, it's residency, it's investments, it's pensions. There's a lot to consider in terms of what you need to think about before you move here. You'd be surprised how many people actually move here and then think about it afterwards, which isn't a huge issue. I don't know if some of you watching now have done that already and you're already enjoying the sun and thinking now about the tax and stuff like that. But it is beneficial. It puts you in a better position. It puts you at ease because you go online. It's quite difficult to understand the process. Everything changes year on year, and it's completely subjective to the person as well. And you'll probably see that in the questions at the end of this, where a lot of them are going to be vague answers, with the hope that we, organize a one-to-one meeting or anything like that, or an email exchange or a phone call, just to speak about you specifically and your circumstances. But a bit about me again. I've had over 5 years experience in financial services, predominantly in England, and obviously moving here to Cyprus, where luckily I speak the language and read and write. So that'll hopefully be helpful for when you get crazy Greek letters in the in the post when you move out here. I know a lot of the English staff members in Chase now that are living here. They always send me a picture, and it's just a letter about whatever it is, and I'm there to hopefully help, and clients there to help as well, especially with tax returns, which we'll get into going down. Obviously, my parents are from Cyprus. My whole family are here. I've lived in the UK, and and the best thing about that is cultural perspective. I'm obviously born and raised in Yorkshire, but then I've also got the added aspect of being Cypriot as well, so understanding the process here as well. I'm going to go to a wedding after this, so be sure to have my aunties. Yeah, all my aunties will be asking why you're not married and you put on weight. So that's just kind of the culture you need to consider when living in Cyprus. They're very, they're lovely people, but they will tell you that you've put on a few pounds, but it's their fault because all they eat is pasta and bread. You'll see, it's lovely. First slide, the checklist. Now, anything before you make any decision in life, I suppose. Before there's a couple of kinds of people. Ones that like to plan and one that don't. I'm guessing because you're attending this event today, you're all trying to plan ahead or trying to figure out a plan while you're here in terms of what you need in terms of taxation, residency, and that's important. So always, when considering a move to Cyprus, especially when you have pensions and investments and all that kind of stuff, it's so beneficial to speak to a financial advisor. It's just to understand your new liabilities. A lot of you actually may have financial advisors in the UK already. They will not be able to advise you going forward, as the UK are no longer part of the EU. So that's made it a little bit difficult, especially for those moving over with ISAs and pensions and have regular reviews with people they've known for years. They won't be able to, going forward, help you with at all. But hopefully we're here as well, and we can book in meetings with your old advisor and transition that over as much as possible. But it's fairly simple. It's a fairly simple process. Understanding the rules here in Cyprus. It's not as There's not many caveats, and we'll get into that going forward. Like different types of taxations in England don't exist at all in Cyprus, so it's a lot of things to consider. And it's important to review savings. It's important to review investment structures, your pensions, because there's different rules that apply once you live out here in Cyprus in comparison to what you used to living in sunny England. And then and it's important to plan ahead, especially when you're planning on selling your main residence in the UK or considering renting it out and then taking the income from that. There's a lot of things to consider. Nothing's wrong with any of that, and it's just a case of planning ahead to make sure you're not caught up in any kind of stress or anything like that. Because no need. You've got people like ourselves, Chase, here today, and then there's other members of this virtual event that hopefully will put all these questions at ease and make it as simple as possible for moving over. Okay, Cyprus wills. Now, Cyprus is a little bit different with wills. There is forced heirship, so there's a lot of situations where if you were to pass away, it would either go to your wife, obviously, or your husband. But if you were both to pass away in some sort of tragic event, then that will go directly to your children. And wills, we would always recommend to take out a will in Cyprus, especially if you own a property out here or investments, and have a will in the UK as well, so they work together and one can refer to the other. There'll be people at this event today that'll help you with that, but if you do need any assistance with that once you're here, I'm more than happy to help. We've got a long list of lawyers and accountants that will be able to help you with that, and obviously with the translation too. If there's any need for translation, I'll be more than happy to guide you through that. Greek lessons will be an added extra charge, but it's fairly simple. Cyprus personal income tax. The individual is a tax resident of Cyprus if they spend over 183 days in Cyprus during any calendar year. You've probably all Googled what it means to be a tax resident of Cyprus. 183 days is the big one. That means that you are spending 183 days out of the calendar year in Cyprus. You'll be then considered as a tax resident. Something that not a lot of people consider and could be very much beneficial to those retiring is the 60-day rule. Yeah. Now, this is where you live in Cyprus for more than 60 days. Let's say you've lived in Cyprus this year for 60 days from January, and you've not lived anywhere else. So, you're going back to England to go and see family, grandkids, and you're probably going to Spain for a couple of weeks to have a sangria, and then going to America to go, whatever. But as long as you're in Cyprus for more than 60 days and nowhere else in the world for 183 days, you'd be considered a tax resident of Cyprus. So that's a huge benefit. We had clients who came in a couple of weeks ago who had retired, used to work for the NHS. They decided they wanted to become to live in Cyprus, but they weren't intending on necessarily living in Cyprus for the full year, but obviously wanted the benefits of being a tax resident here, which we'll get to next. So they've planned out their year ahead, 60 days in Cyprus, enjoying the sun during the summer, or maybe just before, because it does get quite hot, and then traveling across the world in cruises and whatnot, and keeping within those rules to make sure that they remain a tax resident, but also have the flexibility of going to see their family in England and India and all that kind of thing. So there's workarounds a lot for what you want to do, and it just goes back to the initial point of planning ahead and just understanding what you need. But these are the regular rules, really. 183 days to be a tax resident, and if you do not live anywhere else for 183 days, as long as you live more than 60 days here in Cyprus, you're a tax resident. So that's perfect, and we can talk through that about your personal circumstances afterwards if need be.
Yeah, great.
Tax rates here in Cyprus, they're a lot more beneficial than the UK. As you can see, the first 19,500 is nil tax rate. And then I'll not read through it, but you can see there that from 19,500 to 28,000, 20%, and I'm reading through it. But and it goes on to 60,000 plus, and it's 35%, which obviously completely differs to the UK. And then, which I imagine every single person on this presentation today, I've heard about the 5% tax rule. It's a huge benefit living here in Cyprus. You obviously get an allowance of 3,420 per annum. and then anything above that could be 5%. Now that is a massive benefit, but it's not an either or. It's not a you've got one and you can't do the other situation. So obviously, if you have an income, let's just say and this is a brilliant income, but let's just say over 100 grand. Obviously, the 5% the flat tax rate would be hugely beneficial. You've gone from paying 40% in the UK to 5% here in Cyprus. So that's a massive one. But let's also say you're on £22,000 per annum, and you only have heard about the 5% because that's what they love to show in lights. There is also a scenario where it's probably cheaper than you to go on the normal personal tax brackets, because obviously you're paying first 19,500 tax free, and then that remaining 2,500 at the 20% tax rate. So I haven't got a calculator. I could be wrong. You're probably laughing at me, but I'm pretty sure that's going to be cheaper than what the 5% rate would be for the whole amount above 3,420. So that again, it's just about planning. It's just about putting your head together, getting a calculator out, and speaking with your advisor about what route would be beneficial to you. But again, it's super simple. It's incredibly beneficial, especially when comparing it to Cyprus, to the UK. Sorry. And yeah, next slide. The residency application. Now, this changed in the 1st of January this year, it does say third country nationals. The UK, England is now considered a third country national. They're no longer a part of the EU. They've not really publicised that much. They've kept that quiet, actually, but I'm joking. It was huge. So we're not in the EU anymore. So we're classed as third country nationals. So there's additional requirements that you need to consider when applying for the residency application. Obviously, the annual income is £24,000 per annum. Change my notes here, sorry. It is £24,000 per annum. You need to have a clear criminal record from country of origin or residence. So you don't need to get a clear criminal record before you move. And then a medical exemption certificate for blood tests and on all those kinds of issues there, and a chest x-ray to be clear of TB, which I had to Google recently because I had no idea what that meant. But yeah, all the standard things. And then you've got to remember, third country national is someone that's not in the EU, so they're not within a country that has the EU regulations, so they do those extra checks to make sure you're fine. But take this with a pinch of salt. Obviously, if you've got a criminal record or if there's any major issues, it should be fine. The UK is treated as a country that they want you to come and move here in Cyprus, so it shouldn't be very difficult, and it's a super easy process, and I'll be more than happy to put in a plan together to see what you need to do before you move and what you need to do when you get here as well. So hopefully that'll be as simple as it seems. Why purchase the property in Cyprus? Well, it goes without saying, really. It's incredibly sunny.
Well, like, why not?
Yeah, it's November right now, and today it's 30 degrees. I think in the UK, I spoke to my parents earlier. I think it's like 5 or 6 degrees and raining.
It was like 3 this morning.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Crazy.
Really cold. But do you know what? I do miss. I was telling this to the last person I spoke to. I do miss coats. I miss those extra pockets.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I miss the rain.
No.
I don't know. I lived in Manchester for 10 years, and I kind of got used to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it obviously goes without saying why I live in Cyprus. It's paradise. The food's better, the weather's better, the people are incredibly hospitable. It's amazing. But obviously, for more financial reasons, I'll read off this list. It's low cost of living. It's fairly cheap in comparison to the UK, especially if you I don't know, those who live in the south of England, it's a lot more cheap, and then so that's a lot to consider. Obviously that sometimes may not be the case because it's an island, so buying cars and stuff like that might be a bit more expensive just because of the transportation from whatever country it's come from to Cyprus, but that needs something you may need to consider before moving. But in relatively, it's a lot lower cost of living, higher quality life. I think they live longer here, which I hope that's the case.
Oh.
I don't know, it's the Mediterranean. Yeah, no, I think officially it's the Mediterranean diet. I don't know, and the sun on the skin. I'm type 1 diabetic, and when I told my doctor I moved here, it's just having that heat every day and not being so cold. The blood
it's good
circulation,
for your bones as well.
everything. Yeah. So that higher quality of lifestyle, and as well, my colleague Jill, she has grandchildren. She's lived in Bermuda for however long, and she moved to Cyprus a
Wow.
couple of years ago, and she's got a lovely house, and her grandchildren come and visit her in the summer every year. And you'd think you'd spend more time with your grandchildren if you live in the UK, but it's not necessarily the case between
No,
school and football and all
exactly.
that kind of stuff. And when you are in Cyprus, there's like, oh my God, I'm gonna go to Waterworld. So I'm
Yeah.
more excited to spend time with grandma and granddad. So the lifestyle is fantastic. It's favourable policy to obtain a permanent residence. Like I said, UK nationals, it's a lot more favourable to want to come out here and get a permanent residence. So that's something to consider. And it's one of the top destinations for retirement. There's huge communities here, yeah, especially British communities, especially in Paphos. I'm in Larnaca today, and in Larnaca and Limassol. There's a lot of communities that it's a melting pot, and Greek people in general. Cypriots are incredibly hospitable. So everyone, they're all Greek dancing at the end of the night. They're all listening to ABBA. There's all different kinds of
Oh,
cultures going on. So,
my favorite.
yeah. And the tax levied for purchasing immovable property is relatively low. So that's something to consider. And you're probably going to speak to other people at this virtual event today about that going forward. But yeah, incredible, a lot of great reasons. Bad reasons, pasta and bread, you might put a couple of pounds on, but you can work that off. Going to the beach and swimming
Yeah, I was literally about to say walks
yeah,
on the beach.
yeah, walks on the, which could be worse. It could be walks on Blackpool Beach. I don't know. Cyprus capital gains tax. So in Cyprus, capital gains tax is just based on property. In UK, you probably, especially those who have investment accounts, you probably, or bonds or anything like that, capital gains tax is applicable on that. For example, we had clients who just moved to Cyprus. Their financial advisor in the UK had recommended them set up an investment account, and that they would, not invest, it was a bond. So they would use the 5% rule for withdrawals each year, sorry. As soon as we had the meeting, I quickly explained that in Cyprus, any kind of investments or savings, if you take a withdrawal from that, it's completely tax-free. It's classed as a return of savings. So you've got to think of it as you've already paid tax on that money you've put in the investment. So there's no reason to tax that back out when you receive it. The UK, obviously, with capital gains tax in the UK, last tax year, it was 12,500 your allowance, and then anything above that could be up to 40%. This year, they've reduced that, so 7,500 annual allowance. So obviously, it's a huge. You're paying a lot of tax on investing, and there are ways around that by obviously better and ISAs and things like that. But obviously, you can't. So like an ISA in the UK, it's tax free when you take out income. That's any type of investment here in Cyprus. So that's a return of savings. So that's a huge benefit. But in terms of capital gains tax, that will be applicable. That'll be on financial gains of the sale of your Cypriot property for the first 17,086 euros, and being exempt for each person. An allowance is made for transfer fees paid, inflation rate per year, and the cost of additions made to the property. So if you want to put on a conservatory, that there'll be an allowance for that. And the gains for the sale of the property are exempt for up to 85,000 euros if the owner resides in it continuously for at least 5 years. So if there's been a gain in the property of over 85,430 and you've lived there continuously for 5 years, then there would be a exemption up to that amount, I should say.
Yeah.
So that's a huge benefit. And once you've lived here for 5 years, you'll have a lovely time. You'll be living life, and you'll be able to use that exemption. But again, this will go into more detail, especially when you're ready to buy a property and whatnot. Property taxes and fees in Cyprus. The first two you can see here, the local authority fees and the municipality tax. They are both basically a council tax. So like you pay in the UK, it's a council tax. It's dependent on where you live. For example, in the UK, it's less council tax if you live in Doncaster, compared to living in central London, obviously. And then here as well in Cyprus, if you live in one of the villages or in the main city or in one of the bigger towns, then the cost will depend. And then the local authorities fees is about £85 to €85. So I'm still getting used to that, by the way. €85 to €500 is payable, and that's depending on the property size, the local authority, like I said, and the what kind of street lines and sewages there are. And then the municipality tax as well, that's 0.1 to 0.2%, and that's based on the value of the property on the 1st of January 2013, or the first valuation of if it was a new build. So if it was built in 2016, it would be the first valuation of that. That was one of the questions the last time I did this, and I did not know the answer, so I made sure to update that paragraph in this presentation. So yeah, any kind of property post 2013, that will be the valuation it would use to make that amount. And then the sewage tax as well. This might not be applicable. It's depending on whether you live in a village or in a large town or city. But that's 0.05% and 0.3% on the property 1st of January 2013, or the first valuation if it was a new build. And it's super simple. It really is. You get the letter. It's incredible. It's a lot more cheaper than you expect always. And it's really easy to pay online, in person, however you want. And it's really beneficial. I know, for example, bins taken out in the UK, I think it's like, twice a year right now. I don't know how bad it is, but it feels that way. Here it's basically every day, which is nice, and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of benefits, and then it's really nice, and that's depending on where you live, obviously. Like my colleague Jill, she lives in a village, Anarita, and I live in Paphos town centre, so it's fairly different, but both equally great outcome. Stamp duty. Now, this is obviously something you're all aware of. The purchaser is liable to payment of stamp duty on the purchase price of the property at the following rates. I'll not go through the rates, but you can see there on the property. Most likely, when you do purchase property, this will be upfront and clear, especially for your estate agent or lawyer or anything like that. So that's something we always need to consider when purchasing a property. Fairly simple. The 0 to 5. 0, 5 to 170, 0.15, and then over 170, 0.2. So always consider that when purchasing a property in life, in the UK, in Cyprus, in Timbuktu, wherever you need to be. Always consider the tax liabilities you have. Buying property for residency for third country nationals and from the 2nd of May. So this changed in May of this year. Property value would at least need to be €300,000 plus VAT. Property must be a new build if you're going to use it to gain residency, and you need to prove an annual income of £50,000 for the main applicant, and then additional 15 for your spouse, and additional 10 for your minor children, so the children under the age of 18. As I said, with any kind of residency application, you'll need a clear criminal record of country of origin residency, and you need to certify that you do not intend to work in Cyprus. So if you are going for this, it's usually for retirement. So you'll need to make sure that you're not working in the local Alpha Mega supermarket or anything like that. So yeah, that's something you need to consider. So this one's basically for those who aren't going to be working here in Cyprus, and those that are looking to spend their days on the beach and their evenings in the bar, or watching films or whatever they want to do. So I shouldn't presume. VAT payable on property in Cyprus. As you can see here, it's 19% VAT is payable when buying a new property, except when, and this is where it helps, a reduced rate starting from 5% is applicable for purchases on new properties subject to certain conditions being met. So that means the property will need to be your primary and permanent resident of the applicant for the next 10 years, which is, if you're here to do it, that'll be a massive benefit of staying here for 10 years. The applicant has not purchased another property with a reduced VAT rate, so you can only do this one time. So if you're looking to buy another property, that would have to be at the normal 19% rate. And the applicant would have to be over the age of 18. I don't know many 14-year-olds looking to buy, but the way YouTube's going right now, I suppose that makes a difference.
I know, you never know now.
That's very true, but good on them. And then the 5% VAT is payable for the first 200 squared floor area of the property. So when you are looking at your house and you are looking at how big the garden is, I love the size of that kitchen, that'll be something to consider. But obviously you can speak to your estate agent in more detail, or with us if you need any help on that, to really pick the right place and understand that if you get something, a foot bigger than what it should be, it could, mean your VAT is jumping from 5% or 19 to 19%. So that's something to consider, just to being applicable for that 5%.
absolutely.
General health system, it's a lot. It's very favourable, especially for UK nationals and people moving here. Patients have the option to select their healthcare provider from private as well as the public healthcare sector, and contribution rates are as the table below shows. So for those who are coming here to work, it's 2.65. For those who are coming here to set up their own business and work, it's 290, and then the pensioners 2.65, and then people earning rental income, dividends, and other income from Cyprus, it'd be 2.65. So it's incredibly favourable. The GHS, the General Health Service contributions, they're capped at 180,000 total annual income. So if you make more than that, you won't be paying more than that cap there. And it's really easy system. It's great for understanding English as well, which sounds small, but it's huge, especially when you're considering health situations. You want the added understanding of you can speak and understand what they're saying. It's super fantastic. Jill and I both use it. Jill being my colleague in Cyprus, and myself who's diabetic, so I need to get my insulin and all that kind of stuff. It's super easy to use, and prescriptions, and it is dependent on the person, especially if you have a certain amount of prescriptions that you need. There is a work between the NHS in the UK and DHS here in Cyprus, so it should be fairly simple. And again, we'll be able to talk you through what you need to do to do all that as well. And I spoke really fast. I've just realised that. I'm so sorry.
No, that was great.
Yeah, you can slow down. Once you watch this back, you can slow down the speed if you'd like. And I'm really sorry about that. I'm incredibly nervous. But right here, if you all want to get out your phones, this is a QR code. You just take a picture of it, and you can book a meeting with me directly. You can. I imagine a lot of you have questions. You have specific questions to yourself. Obviously, that's always dependent on the person, and I blacked out about 30 minutes ago, so I don't know how great my answers will be. But we can have a one-to-one conversation and really get to your questions and help you as much as possible. And if that's just Chris, where should I go for dinner on my first day here? I'm more than happy to recommend. McDonald's is fantastic. I'm joking. My contact details are all below there as well. So please feel free to get in contact with me or my colleague Jill, who's the regional manager of Cyprus. You'll see her on the website too.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you, Chris. We do have one question actually, and it's just, could you summarise why people should seek professional financial advice when they move to Cyprus, and when is the best point in time to do this?
Around about now. So the tax year in Cyprus is January to December, which seems so much simpler and so much easier. But if you're used to being in England, it's April to April. It can be a bit. Yeah. So if you were to move here now, your tax returns for next year would be for this year. So it would be beneficial to come before January or even the beginning of this year. So if you were to move in February, you wouldn't be paying your tax returns until the following year, so 2025 for 2024. So it's and that goes into your first question as well about why do you need to speak to a financial professional. It's just to work that out. It's just to see what your options are, how much time you have. There's never a problem with whatever time of year you want to come. It's just about planning ahead. So if you do decide to move whenever, have that conversation completely free of charge. I'm more than happy to help. And then not just that, a lot of you have worked for years, worked for 20, 30, 40 years. You've put money in your pension, you've waited for this time to be able to retire in Cyprus, or you've saved up enough money to start a business here. And why just do it off the whim? Why just do it and not understand your options? Why not speak to a professional? Understand your tax. Because some of you may not even realise there was the 5% income rule for pensions. Some of you may have thought that was the only rule.
Exactly.
There's different scenarios. And again, like I spoke about with some clients that we spoke to a couple of weeks ago, the rules in England are different in terms of investments. You can be saving a lot more money, paying a lot less tax on anything. And I know firsthand when I first moved here, it isn't simple. If you go online and do it yourself, it's all up in the air. Rules change every 6 months, and speak to a professional that specialise, especially in expats moving to Cyprus, and those who have done it themselves too. And I know myself, I've only got 5 years of experience, and the majority of that's in the UK. But I've worked for Buchanan and across the board, and you'll probably see a few of them today in the event. 20, 30 years experience. Gillian, over 30 years experience in financial services. She's lived in Bermuda, Switzerland, Portugal, all across the world, and
Wow.
even lovely, London. So there's all different kinds
Yeah.
of in Asia. And my other colleagues here today, Scott Newport, and all these kind of things. Seek advice, ask questions. Ask questions not just about Cyprus, understand your options about Spain, Portugal, Canada, wherever you want to be, and put yourself in a position where when you do move out here, you can literally just sit back and relax and not worry about,
Yeah,
I've got to do this, I've got to do that. Have someone help you, because why not? You've worked this hard to this point where you deserve to have that extra help and enjoy yourself. So that's why.
absolutely. Yeah.
Sorry, that was a long-winded question. And look at
No,
the
that was
background there.
great.
Look how lovely that beach is. I'm pretty sure that's Cyprus. If it's not, we'll go with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
30
so
degrees, and
essentially,
we're in November 11th, and it's 30 degrees. That's
oh my gosh, there you go.
yeah.
I'm sold.
Yeah. I've
Great.
rambled on.
Okay,
I'm
so
so sorry.
no, not at all. It's easier for the buyer and it makes it, yeah, better for their journey, really,
Yeah,
whilst you
exactly.
have bona fide contacts that can really
Perfect.
help assist their
Exactly.
journey. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes perfect sense. Okay, brilliant. Well, that's about all we have time for now, I'm afraid. But thank you so much to our guest, Chris, for sharing your knowledge with us today. And thank you for all our listeners for joining us. So yeah, I mean, we strongly recommend that you get in touch with Chris and Chase Buchanan directly to discuss your requirements in detail, and they'll be available in our exhibition hall should you have any more questions. So yeah, please do take full advantage of our virtual platform, speak to our exhibitors, and add our guides to your goodie bag. And for guidance, please head to our property guides booth in the hall. Thank you so much again, Chris, and thanks to our viewers, and happy property hunting.
Thank you, Grace. See you all soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.